Let me adjust this light a little bit. I'm wearing a white shirt. Still kind of pasty. Let me point this up like this. All right. Well, I'm gonna roll with this. Why don't I try this? Hold on. No, I still got the light up there. Okay. Let me turn this back on. Cinematography. It's a science all in itself. Hello everyone. Or whoever chooses to watch live or on the playback. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar, and this is Big Discussions 76, my original channel. First of all, please like the stream, please share it, and please subscribe to my channel. Well, first of all, guys, it's fortunately I live in a warm weather state, or a relatively warm weather state, because when you're sitting down, teleworking, and working remotely all day, you have to get up and go somewhere. So a couple of hours ago, I was thinking, I knew I wanted to get this stream in tonight, but my mind was completely fried. So I went outside, did some exercises, got a little refreshed, and now I'm going to come back and do this short stream because it's like I've rebooted. So guys, tonight, I'm going to have a short financial stream. I'm going to read something that I wrote, because as I resumed, I wanted to stay on that theme of building, quote unquote. And I think that since money is actually a favorite topic of mine, uh, I've written several things that are money related, and I want to continue to revisit these topics on my channel over and over again. And any of you who watched my Ron Wills live stream 2 weeks ago, you know that Ram is a money guy. And if I recall correctly, Ram said that he's only living off of 40% or 40 to 50% of his income. So Ram is a money guy. He's got a business channel. And I'm a money guy. This isn't strictly a business channel, but I have a blogging platform where I've written several things about money. So I'm going to read this blog post about what a net worth is. Many of you may know what that is, and there are lots of people who don't. So I read the compounding interest post a couple of weeks ago, and I arguably should have done the net worth concept first, but there's flexibility in everything. So before I get into this post, I was going to read a short one in this one, but this one's kind of lengthy. So I'm just going to read this one and then jump off so I can watch the latest episode of Wu-Tang: An American Saga and maybe squeeze in last night's first episode of The Wonder Years. So let's see. I need to show this. See, I have a blogging platform. I'm going to be reading from that platform tonight. If anyone wants to contact me with content ideas or suggestions or questions, you can use that email address right there, bigdiscuss76 at bigwordsarepowerful.com. There's a Big Words blog site Facebook page. That's my Twitter handle, and that's my Instagram handle. I see I see Chris is here. Hello, Chris. It's always good to see you. Thank you for stopping through. Of course, you probably know this already with the way you've. I think you got your son, not your son's, your nephew's college funds or something to that effect. Um, so you probably know this already. If you're new coming in, please hit the like. I know some of the larger content creators are on right now. Um, and I know that money topics aren't always popular. They're very, very important, but they're not always popular. Um, so before I jump in, I'm going to jump in really quickly so I can have some. That's my Facebook notification. It's a Facebook notification. One of my, I actually did a voiceover of this essay. If you go back about 2 years into my catalog, geez, I cringe when I think about some of the old content I created because I wasn't as good at editing video and shooting video and putting together solid videos at that time. But I did this one via voiceover before my channel got to 1,000, and I think this is worth redoing, and I think this is worth revisiting because it's such an important concept. She says, "LOL. Yes, my nephews. Don't try to throw kids on me." Oh, okay. Well, Chris, that sounds like you're not pro kids. Except, well, some people like to treat kids for a day and then drop them off later on that night. So it sounds like you're one of those people, which is fine. It's 2021. Um, but one of my influences, I made a video about this as well, is the late Bruce Williams. I'm sure this man has died. This was an older white man, and he had a talk radio show that I fell in love with when I was a graduate student at the University of Michigan. And Bruce talked about everything: current events, money. People would call him up and talk about their mortgages and their annuities, and he'd sit there and calculate interest rates in his head, and they'd talk about all kinds of things. And he talked about current events. At that time we were going through the second Persian Gulf War, but he's definitely one of my influences. So you may hear a lot of different things on this channel going forward. I want to have more guests back, but definitely money's going to be a major pillar here. She says, I'm pro kids, just not yet. Okay. All right. All right. So a net worth. Um, let me enable my screen share here, and then I'll jump in, and then I will jump off. I know some other of the bigger content creators are going now, so folks are probably over watching their stuff. This is my blogging platform, the Big Words blog site. And I'm going to show you guys one other thing before I jump into this particular essay. I had a little experiment on this site. I created a tab called Select Big Words and Concepts. So anything this usually involves stuff that I've written about. So I have some science stuff here, some money stuff, like branding, the definition of cheap, compounding interest. When BGS got doxxed, I added this word doxing to my big words list on my blogging platform. And I think that was the first time I reached out to BGS, and I think that was the first time he realized who I was. I think it was via Twitter. And I said, hey, I shot this video based on you. So I added doxing to the list. The 4 C's of engagement rings, I added that to the list. This week, I added equity because someone emailed me in my blog email address, and he asked me to link to his website or link to their website. So I added equity, and I also added a home warranty. So those are all there. But that's another part of my blogging platform. I see Alonzo has come into the chat for now. And actually, everyone, if you haven't checked out Alonzo's content, the All-Star Advisor, I would advise that. He knows a lot about insurance. And at some point, I'd like to have him over here to explain to us the difference between term and whole life, because I don't have a nice concrete definition in my mind of what those things are. And Alonzo actually read this essay before I edited it on his channel months ago. So I went ahead and I updated this. The great Malcolm Gladwell says we should always update our writings. So a little history on this. This was written back in April 2017. So this was written over 4 years ago in its original form. This is 2 years after some of you know that I was engaged at one point, but this is written 2 years after that engagement broke down. And as a little backstory, I was Dr. Dunbar, and I'm going to talk about this on this channel. Dr. Dunbar got into extreme debt trouble about 10 years ago after I started my federal career. And when I was engaged, I was digging myself out. I was digging myself out in large part using the Dave Ramsey roadmap, the Financial Peace University roadmap. But once that engagement broke down, it kind of slowed down me digging out of my debt hole. But I knew that once I dug out of that debt hole, I could start to build my net worth. So that's what was happening around 2017. I had gotten out of my debt hole and I started following the Dave Ramsey roadmap, emergency fund, start your emergency fund, fully funded, start saving for your retirement, those kinds of things. So that's what was happening around then. And also another, well, I'll call her an acquaintance, a PhD acquaintance. I shared with her, and I haven't spoken to this person in a while, but I shared with her that I had a blogging platform, and she went to some of my stuff, and I think she saw stuff like this, and she said to me, she said, when I was reading your stuff, I was asking myself, who is his audience? Who's reading this? And I think that was very telling in terms of whether or not she was interested in something like this, and then whether or not she was interested in knowing what a net worth is, and whether or not she was interested in financial literacy. She was a PhD in one of the humanities, but I noticed she didn't say it was brilliant that you're writing about financial literacy. She kept saying, I can't understand who his audience is. Who would want to read this stuff? Okay, so let's jump in because I want to eat and watch the latest episode of Wu-Tang Forever, and perhaps I can squeeze in the Wonder Years as well. Your net worth, your gross salary, and what they mean. And I lifted this quote earlier. This wasn't in here when Alonzo read it on his channel. The interesting thing about one's net worth is that it can't be negotiated with one's employer. So you can't negotiate your net worth with your employer. Everyone, the super chat is live. Whoever comes through here, if you want to make a contribution there. Also, I'm not expecting a large crowd for this, but I'll drop my Cash App and PayPal. BGS just shared it. I was just talking about him. And lo and behold, he just shared this. How about that? Give me 1 second. The other reason this is significant is because I'm finishing my book project, and I'm really trying to market myself as a writer. So I'm definitely going to showcase more of my writings. And my writing style, as you'll see, there's usually some form of storytelling, and I'm usually personalizing what's happening. That's my writing style. It's very frank. It's very matter of fact. Okay. So your net worth, your gross salary, and what they mean. Also, shout out to the Roger Report. I haven't gone up on the panel lately. I'm watching from the cloud, as Smargo said a couple days ago. But Roger's very outspoken about, he thinks Black men should shoot to make six figures. You can build your net worth even without making six figures. This is a very, very critical piece of information I'm about to share with you. Okay, your net worth, your gross salary, and what they mean. The interesting thing about one's net worth is that it can't be negotiated with one's employer. Okay. You guys know what that is. That's a $5 bill. That's Honest Abe, Abraham Lincoln from Illinois. The rest of the images in this blog post are going to be from the east side of Buffalo, and I intentionally used those images because they contrast with what I'm talking about, and I'll explain that. Note: the subject matter of this blog post is not new. It has been known for years by those who learned about it in their families or who have discovered it on their own. It's simply a discussion from my personal perspective, which I think is worth visiting. The pictures displayed throughout this post are from the east side of my hometown of Buffalo, New York. My first money lessons started there, a lot of what not to do, and they capture the essence of some of the money challenges facing my brothers and sisters in my hometown and across the country. So, this first section reads Money Lessons from Your Family. Life is literally a lottery. And regardless of your color or nationality, one of its immutable truths is that you can't control the family that you were born into. You can't control the parents you were born to, which likewise dictate the privileges and advantages you have access to. We often think of privilege in terms of black and white, in parentheses, white privilege, but there are also black families that have privileges over other black families. The family you are born into, in large part, guides your start in life, the information, and the values that will dictate your early life choices, good or bad, though they don't necessarily shape all that comes afterwards. A good thing for some. Neither of my parents talked about what a net worth was when I was growing up. As described in the Big Words blog site story, there's a tab on this platform telling my personal story, how I started writing. My mother and her siblings were first generation college students, descendants of parents who were part of the Great Migration. My father's situation was similar. They were children of the civil rights era, and thus the big goal for them was earning college degrees and then securing stable jobs on equal footing with their white peers. That for them was winning, and it was also a surpassing of their elders. For those of us born from their generation, Generation X, going to college was also expected, but what would be the next level for us? What was winning for our generation? Okay. So, in other words, my folks never talked about what a net worth was. It was, go get your college degree. I'm sorry, go get your college degree, get a job, and everything else will um, fall into place. Well, for those of us in Generation X, we know that wasn't necessarily true. There was a whole host of other things that we had to know going forward, especially in terms of wealth building. And we also know that a college degree isn't necessarily a key to a comfortable life or becoming wealthy. There are lots of other ways to do it. Here we go. One's gross income versus their net worth. Okay, so again, that's a picture from the east side of Buffalo. That's a store called Gear Up Apparel and Kicks. Now, this is 4 years ago. These days, I have a lot of discussions via text messaging with my brother Amal and three close friends from Hutch Tech High School in Buffalo, New York, which is in large part where my book takes place. The twins, Alima Raheem Gaines, and our other buddy, Heston Brown. All week long, we still do this now. All week long, we discuss topics including sports, politics, and some of the silly stuff we see in the media, on Black Twitter, and on Facebook. We discuss social issues as well, particularly as they relate to the Black community. We're a Black males support group or even our own little think tank. Recently, in a group dialogue that started out with a controversy regarding Tyrese Gibson's spouse and whether she was actually Black, something else much more important came up: the concept of one's net worth. Aleem cited something he heard about listing what Black men in the United States earn in terms of average gross income? I responded, wondering what the breakdown was for Black women. And Alim on Q cited the 2010 study by Mariko Chang describing Black and Hispanic women having average net worths of $100 and $120. Okay, that was not written to smear anyone or to smear our sisters. That was discussed. That was being discussed a couple of years ago. Um, so that came up in conversation. And I think if that article is still live, I linked it. I linked to it in my blogging platform. I quickly pointed out that there was a difference between one's gross income and their net worth. My brother, the eldest in the group, asked what a net worth was. For perspective, we're all just above the age of 40. So it's about 4 years later. So we've all progressed in age. Alim and I both knew the answer and gave it. I shared that I was first introduced to the term in my late 20s, but didn't completely grasp it until my mid 30s. Very, very late in the game. I pondered the fact that my brother still hadn't grasped it yet. Not a knock on him by any means, just our life's circumstance. I then wondered how our own life decisions would have been different had we known this important concept in our teens. Okay. So again, I didn't hear about it. I didn't hear about it from my parents. My brother didn't hear about it from our parents. And I've heard that in many Jewish families, Alonzo, if you're still watching, maybe you can confirm this, but maybe you're not Jewish, so maybe you wouldn't know. But I've heard that in many Jewish families, they talk about money and businesses regularly. We don't, at least in my family, we don't talk about that stuff. We talk about politics. We talk about Donald Trump. We talk about the community, those kinds of things. But we rarely talk about, as a group, business, wealth building, and money. So what is your net worth? Just briefly, your net worth is the numerical difference between what you own and what you owe. Your savings and your assets minus your debts and obligations, in parentheses, liabilities. Your savings are self-explanatory. The amount of liquid cash you have available and can access quickly. Assets can be anything from securities such as stocks, gold or silver, real estate investments, equity in your home, or profitable businesses. If you're an employee, a major contributor to your net worth is your retirement savings. That's if you've been disciplined enough and able to steadily set money aside. Debts/liabilities are self-explanatory as well. Common forms of debt are credit cards, car notes, mortgages, home equity lines of credit, loans against your retirement savings, etc. So a couple things there. I mentioned to you guys I was in debt trouble about 10 years ago. I dug myself out. I'm going to talk about that. When I was in debt trouble, I couldn't fully fund my retirement savings. It was hard for me to fund an emergency fund at that time. So debt will choke the life out of you. It will add stress to your life, and it will prevent you from doing numerous things. Speaking of debt, I'm going to invite at some point LJ from Savings Minus Debt to come over here. Alonzo was over there on Saturday, but if LJ comes, he's probably going to shake things up. I guess I would be a debt slave as well because I have a mortgage and a car note and a student loan, but that's it. Student loan, car note, mortgage, the revolving credit. I try to pay that off immediately if I use my credit card. So I only started learning about what a net worth was in my late 20s out of curiosity and chance. Books like Rich Dad Poor Dad talk about it in addition to The Millionaire Next Door and Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University. The term is not explicitly addressed, but FPU's baby steps ultimately lead to a steadily increasing net worth. I'm going to say a few words First of all, thank you for all of you who are here listening to this. Um, if you haven't, please hit the like button. I'm going to throw up Rich Dad Poor Dad. Um, One of the things Robert talks about in his books, which is very, very important, and this is going to be also linked to how I got into debt trouble 10 years ago. But one of the things Robert talks about repeatedly in his books is finding mentors. And the truth is, I honestly didn't really start tracking my net worth until my mentor put his foot up my rear end and told me, okay, you need to get your retirement savings going. And I don't think he told me that I needed to start calculating my net worth quarterly, but I started. And it was because of him and his son, who are both very, very financially astute. Petway Boy says, my net worth is hella low. I'm catching game right now. I should be able to put a lot more money away once I get a raise at work. My car note will be paid off in 8 months. That is my only debt. Good for you that's your only debt. Okay. And as I'll describe, we all start somewhere. So the key is to kind of look at this, listen to this, and to see if you can start to incorporate this knowledge for yourself. The other thing, guys, since BGS shared this, geez, there's so much going on in our country right now. Keep your eyes on what's going on. I mean, you hear so much about the dollar losing value and the dollar weakening and cryptocurrency, and there's just so much going on in the world right now. Keep your eyes on what's going on. I mean, who knows if we'll be using paper money at some point. Yeah, who knows? Just keep your eyes on everything that's going on, because there's so much going on in the world and in our economy. A metric of your wealth. Okay, so what's the big deal about this somewhat abstract and nebulous term that only few understand? The answer is that your net worth is a metric of your wealth, which is very, very different than your gross salary. This is a critical distinction because a high gross salary doesn't necessarily translate into a high net worth. A person or a couple can have high gross salaries and still have negative net worths. There, in another piece that I wrote, I cited an article entitled "The Shocking Number of Americans Who Can't Afford a $400 expense." I'm not going to jump to it right now, but there's a bar chart. You know what? I will jump to it. Give me a second. Let me, because it's worth showing here. Let's see. I see Wayman Brown has entered the building. Wayman Brown, another Buffalo brother. Go McKinley Max. Thank you for coming. Let's see. Let's see. I wrote this a couple years ago about the Trump tax cut and what we could all do with extra money. Okay, let me see if there's a picture of them on the Morning Express. Let's see, Main Street. Here it is. Let's see if this article is still live. Yeah, it's still live. This is from the Washington Post. And let me get rid of that. Yep, there it is. There's the bar chart, guys. Let's see. Let me stop this. I'm going to share this with you guys. This is fascinating. If you're new coming in, please hit the like. This bar chart right here. Ah. There it is. Okay. This bar chart. If you look at this bar chart, I'll drop the link in the chat So you guys can take a look for yourself. Okay. The super chat is live, guys. If you want to make a donation there, otherwise you can donate to my Cash App and PayPal if you see fit. That is the link to that article from the Washington Post. If you want to make a donation of any kind, donations are welcome. If you look at this bar chart, and the resolution might not be good here on YouTube, but they basically surveyed people, and they delineated people making $0 to $40,000, people making $40,000 to $100,000, and then people making $100,000 or more. And then they broke it out by race, and I think in general. But the fascinating part about this lower group here at the bottom, and the link is right there, you can look for yourself, is that there are a number of people making $100,000 or more who couldn't afford a $400 expense. So this data set, at least it tells me that there are people out there making six figures who themselves are just barely making it. They don't have any money saved. They are probably living above their means. And you wouldn't think that people making over $100,000 would have a hard time coming up with a $400 expense. But this data set shows that link is right there in the chat. I'll probably leave it under the playback for this video. But I'm saying this to say that for many people, $100,000 in six figures is the holy grail. But as we know, that isn't necessarily the case. I mentioned this in another stream. I'm going to keep going and finish this up. I know I'm talking a lot here, and I've gotten off the path. There is a lot of variability in making six figures. It can range, and me and my mentor have talked about this. It can range from $100,000 to $999,999. So there's a huge variability there in what six figures is. If you're on the lower end and you live in a market like Washington, D.C., like I do, your $100,000 is just barely making it. And obviously, the closer you get to $999,999, the more well off you are. So there's variability there. Okay, let me go back. Kareem, thank you for stopping through. Always good to see you. Let me see. Here we go. In Black America, we're often enamored and immersed. In Black America, we're often enamored and impressed with individuals who make six figures. Similar to one's occupation, making six figures by itself can be deceptive. You would assume that a medical doctor, a lawyer, or a news anchor will be very comfortable, but not necessarily. The same is true for someone who makes six figures. Imagine if a person has a gross salary of $100,000 and their expenses are $95,000. They're still essentially broke, right? Beyond a certain point, your gross income is what Malcolm Gladwell in his book Outliers calls an entrance criteria, an attribute that allows you entry into a club. Though it isn't a predictor of greatness, excellence criteria is what separates the great from the average and the underachievers. These are the things that allow one to become wealthy in this case. Contrary to the images we're bombarded with in the media, the excellence criteria for building your net worth don't necessarily involve a lavish and high consumption lifestyle, but instead being frugal and careful with one's money. Dr. Thomas Stanley wrote extensively about this in the Millionaire Next Door series. This means that many people are chasing after the wrong things in life and not knowing it until it's too late. Okay. Wayman Brown says, yes, many people's entire lifestyle is virtually financed. Money, discipline, and learning to allocate is critical. Yep, I'm going to get to that shortly. Underrated Darkness says, big discussions in the chat. Good evening. Thanks for stopping through, Underrated Darkness. What are some keys to growing your net worth? Some of them include budgeting one's money and controlling costs, learning to run a surplus versus a deficit, saving money gradually into an emergency fund, retirement, and then potentially for discretionary investments, and then carrying the least amount of debt possible. What are some keys to keeping and maintaining a low slash negative net worth? Some include spending more than you earn, spending everything you earn, not saving anything, and carrying large amounts of debt, particularly on things that lose value or don't justify borrowing the money. Cars, sneakers, and degrees which don't lead to well-paying jobs. In his Rich Dad Poor Dad series, Robert Kiyosaki actually defines wealth as the amount of time one can go without working while still being able to cover expenses. If you guys want to super chat, that's live. If you guys want to make a donation, you're welcome to do that as well. And if you don't feel inclined to do so, that's fine as well. Guys, remember I said I intentionally put images from the east side of Buffalo, which many would call the hood. I put those pictures in this piece intentionally because there's a contrast. Wayman Brown, this is on Delavan, near Delavan and Bailey, and this is a banner. Well, it's outside of a barber shop. Let's see. But what are the greater implications of growing your net worth and wealth? They can position you to do things like build businesses. They can be used to donate to charities and to give to other students, for example, the chance to go to school to better themselves. Something sorely needed in Black America. This is the importance of organizations like the United Negro College Fund, for example. They can be used to fund political candidates and campaigns and have a true seat at the table when national and local policy decisions are made. At the end of the day, politics is all about money, right? So we've heard BGS talk about, and Dr. Tiasan Johnson talk about the importance of affecting policy. We've heard Dr. Claude Anderson talk about controlling the politicians. Well, arguably that starts at the ground level with how you're budgeting your money and how you're taking care of your money and how much money you ultimately have to give to campaigns and influence the politicians. So you could think about this on the micro level. You could think about this on the macro level right now. Let's see. In Black America right now, discussions like the ones my buddies and I have are actually taking place about the differences between having a high net worth and having a high salary. Again, two things which don't necessarily correlate. One gentleman on Twitter, a Nigerian, I think, who regularly beats the net worth drum, often rebutting people who think they've made it because they've attained a high gross salary. And let me read that again. One gentleman on Twitter, a Nigerian, I think, regularly beats the net worth drum, often rebutting people who think they've made it because they've attained a high gross salary and have luxury items like Mercedes Benzes and BMWs. While these are prestigious toys, they gradually lose value and deceptively don't translate into wealth. I want to take a look at the comment section, guys. Then I'm going to show you something else. Then I'm going to finish up. I made the slide before starting this live stream. This is called net worth tools. So tools needed to build your net worth. Discipline / focus / patience. So it's a long game, a goal / motivation. What's your why? In other words, why are you doing this? Because it takes time, effort, and work to do. Delayed gratification. So the ability to put things off for a little while, the ability to budget, that's critical. And also, finally, the abilities to add and the abilities to add and subtract. Those are the tools right there for doing this. But the first three might be the most critical. Can you negotiate your net worth with your employer? The interesting thing about one's net worth is that it can't be negotiated with one's employer. It's something that must be decided and acted upon by the individual once they understand it, like choosing to eat healthy or choosing to continue to eat an unhealthy diet. It can't be legislated or forced upon groups of people, nor should it be. It's a personal choice, just like practicing a religion or choosing a spouse. Speaking of which, I've read that judges actually consider a couple's net worth during divorces and usually split everything down the middle, a source of tension, particularly when one's spouse hasn't earned the assets being split. Tasha and Ron are living large. She's a school administrator and he's a fireman, my mother said about a couple in their 40s who are friends of the family. She was looking at their professions and what she thought their salaries were and concluded that they were winning financially. Actually, Mom, you don't know that, I said in reply. People can look like they're making it on the outside, but without knowing their savings, their bills, and their without knowing what their savings, their bills, and their debts are, you don't really know how they're doing. My response echoed Robert Kiyosaki's books, where he stated that an individual's financial success is actually dictated by their income statement and balance sheet. Two things you can't see by looking at someone, but things banks weigh heavily when qualifying individuals for mortgages and business loans. Okay, that right there is huge. So you can't look at someone. Well, there are subtle clues that you can see when you're looking at someone um, in terms of how their finances are doing. But when you're going to qualify for a mortgage, especially now, and even going to apply for a business loan or even business credit, yes, banks want to know how your money is doing, which leads to another question and another thing my mother goes on and on and on about, which is that banks don't like to lend to Black people for business loans and for um, uh, what kind of loan is that for small business loans. My mother goes on and on and on about how banks don't want to lend to Black people for or don't want to give Black people small business loans. Well, if you're not handling your finances and you don't have money already saved up and you're not liquid and you don't show that you're if your finances don't reflect that you'll be able to adequately handle that loan, then no, they probably wouldn't lend to you. So speaking of a balance sheet, I'm going to show this to you guys and then we're almost done here. This is a sample balance sheet. I pulled this off of Google. So this particular person, um, they've they've divided up their assets and liabilities into current, intermediate, and long term. Current, I imagine that would be something like your savings that you can easily get to. Intermediate might be a stock or something like that. Long term might be your retirement savings or real estate. In liabilities, same thing. Current, revolving credit. Intermediate, maybe a car loan. Long term, that might be a student loan. Or I can vouch for, yeah, that's probably a student loan or a mortgage because it is true that they set up the student loans to stay with us forever. And I just borrowed a little bit of money, but I'm still gradually paying mine off. Two more pictures I found online, guys. Two sides to your net worth. Your assets, that's what you own. Your liabilities are what you owe. This is a very simple depiction of what that is. Okay. What prevents, there's another picture of the east side of Buffalo. You see you have a little food mart, liquor store, car with the rims. So, what prevents individuals from growing their net worths? Several things, actually. One is ignorance. If no one ever tells you about it and you don't stumble upon the information, you'll never know. Secondly, personal choices prevent one from doing it. It takes discipline and drive, and many individuals lack those. As a man, well, if you've recklessly had a bunch of kids and are bogged down with child support payments, you'll probably never get there. If you're a single mother, also with many, many kids, you'll also have a hard time getting there as well. That wasn't, those weren't a personal shot at anyone. It was just, well, let me read what else I have to say here. It's not impossible, just exponentially more difficult. In one of his videos, Dr. Boyce Watkins, and I know we don't always agree with what Boyce says, but he is a money guy, so his money information, I think, is pretty solid. In one of his videos, Dr. Boyce Watkins stated that the average cost of a child is $250,000 up until it turns 18 years of age. And that's not assuming you're helping your child out in college, but the minimum is $250,000. The other piece is that in some instances, particularly in Black America, only a handful of people in a given family get educated and earn a decent salary. Those individuals are often looked upon to take care of everyone else, a potential siphoning off of the wealth, as Dr. Michael Eric Dyson said, partially joking at the 2015 Congressional Black Caucus annual legislative conference. That day, he was leading a wealth building panel. So at CBC 2015, I think I was covering that as a writer for examiner.com. And they did have a panel discussion on wealth building. And Dr. Michael Eric Dyson did get up there and say, he did jokingly say that in our families, we got Pookie and Ray Ray and Moo Moo and Man Man and Bebe and Lulu. And we've got all kinds of people having kids. And we have to get this person out of jail and that person out of jail. And we never get to build wealth because we're taking care of all these people. Dr. Michael Eric Dyson did say that. So again, we don't always agree with what Dr. Michael Eric Dyson says, but I think he was, there was something, the fact that he would say that in many of our families, there is something to that. And we do know that in families, the high earners are expected to be there for everyone else. And we're expected to clean up other people's messes. So there's some reality to that. So I'm saying that to say that things like that, the family you come from, the choices of the family that you come from, that can impact your ability to build your net worth and to build wealth. I'm almost done, guys. I'm going to throw this in the chat one more time. If you want to donate anything. And again, I know money topics aren't always popular. They're important, but they're not always popular with the masses, which might be why you have a wealthy 1% and you have the 99%. That could help explain that. Who can become a high net worth individual? Here you go. Here's another picture. Delavan check cashing. So it's said that in lower income neighborhoods, there are check cashing places. So liquor stores, check cashing places. In the Black inner cities, stores owned by people from the Middle East, Asia. These are things you see in inner cities, and this is what you see on the east side of Buffalo, where I'm from. Growing a high net worth doesn't necessarily involve getting a PhD, an MD, a PharmD, or a JD. You don't necessarily need a college degree. It simply requires a steady stream of income, understanding debt, and priorities. This is what Dave Ramsey meant when he said money is 20% knowledge and 80% behavior. Okay, that's huge. Money is 20% knowledge and then 80% behavior. So you just need to know what to do and then execute it. But that's the hard part because of things I described. This is also one of the key principles in Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, where players must choose their profession before playing. One would think in the game that it would be easier to get out of the rat race by being one of the higher income professionals like the doctor, lawyer, or the airline pilot. But it's actually easier as the web designer or the janitor. While they generate less gross income, they also carry less debt and have fewer bills. Their cost per child is also less than the higher income professionals. So let's talk about lawyers and doctors for a second, because I did write a couple of Father's Day posts and I did do a live stream on my Father's Day post regarding my dad wanting me to become his lawyer and my brother to become his medical doctor. I became a PhD scientist. My brother didn't finish school, so neither of us did exactly what he wanted us to do. But the point is that he wanted us to become high income professionals. And Robert Kiyosaki talks about this in Rich Dad Poor Dad. I don't know when it started. I don't know if it was always this way, but I know that lawyers, unless they have some sort of scholarship funding or unless one of their relatives has saved for their college funding, many lawyers have to go into debt to finance their education. So they get the degree, they get a salary when they come out, but they come out with significant amounts of debt. The same thing with medical doctors. So there's the prestige of the title, there's the respect you get from everyone, but a lot of high income professionals come out owing a lot of money. And that's something that I didn't piece together until I started playing Cash Flow 101, Robert's game. If you're new coming in, please hit the like. If you want to make a donation, my Cash App and PayPal are there in the chat. Super Chat is also live. Understanding what a net worth is and then making the decisions to grow it is a paradigm shift and a powerful one. As with most things, we all have lives and everyone's situations are unique. We all have relatives and friends who may not necessarily understand the decisions and temporary sacrifices being made. And thus, it's important to know your motivations. You have to know your why. Let me show this again. Tools needed to build your net worth: discipline, focus, patience, a goal slash motivation, knowing what your why is, delayed gratification, and the abilities to budget, add, and subtract. Concluding thoughts. Again, a net worth is not a salary that you make every year. It's a result of spending habits and specific money choices. How often should it be calculated? One of my mentors told me that it should be calculated quarterly. So I calculate my net worth quarterly, personally. If you haven't been paying attention to it, your initial assessment might not look pretty, but it gives you a place to start from, kind of like a doctor's checkup. So what's your net worth? You know what? Don't answer that. From experience, just like your gross income, it's best if you keep it to yourself and only share it with a trusted few, if anyone at all. Money does different things to different people. And when people think you have it, it can do strange things to your relationships, your relatives, and your friends. So that's the end. Here's some other things I wrote. I'll probably read these in the months to come. But that's it, guys. That's your net worth, your gross salary, and what they mean. So, the assumption as I wrote these things, I was learning, I was steadily learning and incorporating these things as I was going along. So right around the time I wrote this is when I really dug in and started calculating my net worth. When I wrote my compounding interest piece, that's when I really started digging in. Well, my mentor had to put his foot up my rear end and tell me, you know what, you need to save in your retirement account and save the max. But as I wrote these things, that's what was happening at that time. So I'm going to look at the chat. I don't see any more questions or comments here. If you guys have any questions or comments, let me know right now. Otherwise, I'm going to shut this down. I didn't expect a huge turnout for this. I want to thank BGS for sharing it. But this is very, very, assuming we still have a dollar in the coming years, and we still have an economy as we know it in the coming years. This is valuable information, because this positions you to become wealthy one day. And there are actually, you can Google this yourself, but there are many federal employees who are self-made millionaires just by budgeting and just by steadily and gradually adding to their retirement accounts. So federal work is said to be stable, and federal employees don't make what private sector employees make. But again, many federal employees have retired millionaires. So by understanding these principles, I'm going to read through some of these comments. I don't know that anyone wants to come up and say anything. I'm going to drop the link in the chat if anyone wants to come up and say anything. I see there are 10 people still watching right now. If anyone wants to come up and say something or maybe ask a question, I'll hang out for a few more minutes and then I'll shut this down. There's the StreamYard link. Let's see. I'm listening. It says peace. He says peace. And then Chris says, I'm pro kids, just not yet. Alonzo says salute. And they also say that high net worth people, since Alonzo passed through, high net worth people tend to, number one, here he is. They tend to have financial advisors. They tend to invest in financial advice. But they also do things like purchase insurances. What's going on, Alonzo? Let me read the rest of these comments, then I'll give you the mic. Pet Web Boy says, my net worth is hella low. I'm catching game right now. I should be able to. Okay, I already read this one. Wayman says, the powers of savings accounts is often overlooked as if not important compared to traditional and trendy investments, but liquidity on hand can work wonders in one's life. Yeah, especially if it'll save you from having to get revolving, or if it'll save you from having to use revolving credit, which I got in trouble with 10 years ago, and I'm going to talk about that later. Corrine says, in here for a short while to support. Wayman says, yes, many people's lifestyle is virtually financed. Money, discipline, and learning to allocate is critical. Let's see. Underrated says, good evening. Hey, Corrine. Appreciate you, Big Discussion 76, for doing this. Thanks, Dwayne. That's crazy. Peace to the chat and Dr. Dunbar. And then Alonzo said, of course we do. Alonzo, what say you?
Thank you for having this wonderful panel, as you usually do. And actually for the article, I'm glad I was blessed to be able to read it a few months back, and now I have to definitely revisit. One thing I wanted to speak to was something that you had mentioned earlier. And no, I am not exactly Jewish. However, being especially in New York City, where there is a heavy population, one of the things that you stated that stands to be evident and true in my experience, and not just on the insurance or financial services, but even on the back end in terms of taxes and auditing. They speak to so I'll put it to you like this. As an advisor, when I go into many less households that look more like us, generally it's what's called a one-legged appointment, where I will either sit with a husband or a wife, but never both. And never are the kids in the conversation. Generally, if you're, late 70s, 80s baby like myself, grown folks are talking business, go in the room. Whereas in a lot of these other communities, it's, hey, we're talking about money and stuff, get in here. So not just that community, but a lot of others, I've seen that to stand evident.
Okay. Well, Alonzo, that makes sense. I mean, I don't know how it is in New York City, but when you look at some place like the east side of Buffalo, look at who owns the businesses. Look at who owns the corner stores and the liquor stores, and um, yeah, that makes sense to me. It seems to me that other groups coordinate. I'm trying to think if social class plays a role in this. I think in general, when other groups come here and they set up shop, they're coordinating their money a lot better than we are.
But a lot of that is the fault of the financial advisors. Um, a lot of that is we haven't thought the best of a particular demographic. And, for example, in my early years in 2011 and 2012, certain areas in Harlem or the Bronx,
Mm-hmm.
I would get a lot of clients in these, low income, high rise buildings, where elevators were known to have certain scents.
Yep.
A lot of these guys would go to these appointments, see the outside of the building and say, oh, no, I'm not going. Let me call them and tell them I had an emergency. So that already cuts off the ability for the knowledge to even go to these people.
Okay. So you're saying many advisors just would show up to the neighborhood and say, what, I'm not going in there. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that's a very common practice.
Okay. Well, I've heard that in other groups at family gatherings, and I don't, I mentioned Jewish people. I'm not saying, as a disclaimer, I'm not saying anything bad about Jewish people. I heard bad things happen if you do. I'm not saying anything bad about them. I'm just saying that I've heard that as a group, at family gatherings, it's not uncommon to hear them talking business and talking about things like insurances and how to combine resources and those kinds of things. And I know that in my family, when we get together, we don't talk about that stuff. We talk about other stuff. So, and that's not saying anything bad about my family. But when you look at how different groups are doing, certainly you have to consider what people are interested in, and if they're seeing the bigger picture. For example,
Absolutely.
I'm sure you heard, Alonzo, that, for example, Asian populations are not very concerned about politics. I mean, I know a couple of months ago they may have been, but in general, they're not concerned about those kinds of things. They're concerned about their business and building their enterprise. Go ahead.
No, you're absolutely correct in that. In terms of politics, to affect politics, you said it in the beginning of the stream. One of the easiest ways to affect politics is to have your net worth, or your ability to be financially stable to donate to these, super PACs or campaigns is very important. And if we want to make that political change, realistically, we have to change with ourselves in our finance.
Yeah, I I am right now the treasurer for the local alumni chapter for my HBCU. I know that there are varying opinions on whether or not HBCUs are still relevant, but having been involved in the chapter for 6 to 7 years, I hear firsthand what the giving rates are for our school. So, in other words, how much money alumni give back to our school. And I'll just say that it's not much. In my opinion, I haven't done any studies on this, but I don't think people, number one, understand the importance of giving back to the institution, but I don't think people have the money to give back to the institution because of this thing I talked about in the stream. They don't know people aren't looking at their finances this way. That's my opinion.
That's interesting. Now that you mention that, that's ironic because one of the things, for example, as alumni, and I actually mentioned this with things like charitable contributions. So things like life insurance are ways that you can actually, as an alumni association, get a group discount on things like life insurance policies to get, small policies that can actually leave large sums to the schools in the wake of we're all going to die. So it might be 30, 40, 50 years from now. But in that 30, 40, 50 years, the minuscule amount that you may have put away toward that insurance will definitely, multiply at least tenfold to what, likely you're seeing as donations.
Hmm. Okay.
Um, so, those are always things I roll out to associations, people who are like auto clubs. And you can get these things, ladies and gentlemen, as long as you're an association or an affiliation or a group that's been established for at least 1 year outside of the purpose of creating investments or insurances. So if you guys were just an alumni association for the past 6 years, you guys qualified to go to, State Farm, Mutual of Omaha, whomever, and say, hey, we'd like to learn about an association discount. And then they can offer you things privately that you may not get from your personal job, such as disability insurances, long-term care, even insurances for passing on wealth back to the school, if not to your own family.
Okay. All right. I think see we're at an hour and 10 minutes. Yeah, I think I've covered everything. Everyone, um, this link is gonna be below the playback of this. If you want to take a look. If you do, please leave a comment on my platform, my blogging platform. Say you liked it or you didn't like it, or say whatever. If you take a chance to read it. I mean, I just read it for you, but um if you think it's worth it, share it with someone else. Share it on your Facebook, whichever. Any sharing is welcome. Alonzo, do you want to say anything else?
Um, like I always say, when people challenge you, they don't challenge you to challenge you, but they challenge you to challenge you. Accept the challenge. Salute.
Hmm. The other thing, I'll close out, and I opened this piece with that is that I didn't learn this at home. I learned this. Uh, I randomly picked up a copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad one day when I was in graduate school in Barnes and Noble on a Sunday. So that's the first time I heard about assets and liabilities and passive income, and I didn't get that at home. That's not an attack on my parents, but it's just is what it is. I didn't hear about what a net worth was at home. So a lot of us have to go outside and eventually find this stuff, if at all. So and so you can imagine that in terms of pop culture, we're being hit with images, we're being sold things all the time, and we're being encouraged to consume all the time. And we're not taught this stuff, most of us, early. So you're lucky to encounter it. And there are whole communities of people who don't know this stuff. whole communities of people who are none the wiser. So, all right, everyone, I'm going to shut this down, and it's late for me. So, for those of you who stopped through and watched, thank you. For those of you who are going to watch on the playback, please like, share, and subscribe. If you want to make, if you want to throw something in the tip jar, that information is below um, this playback. So enjoy the rest of your night. Again, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Take care, and I'll talk to you the next time. Bye bye.